So welcome to introducing enumerations, and enumerations, that's it. So I'm going to be explaining what an enumerated type is, how we can use it to encode meaning, how it makes our code more meaningful and readable, and also introduces C++'s enum class thingy, which is pretty cool. And at the end of it, we will be able to do something like this. Instead of check guess validity returning a boolean, which doesn't mean a lot, and having some horrible to-do that we should be returning a richer value, it'll return this thing called OK or whatever. Cool, so let's dive in and make it happen. So welcome, and welcome. If we look in our view and task list, it's here somewhere, there you go. Then have a look at some of these to-dos. One of these here says check guess validity. To do, make a more rich return value. And if we look here, the reset, we also want to make a more rich return value. We don't know how to do that. And then in our main loop, we want to be validating tries. And also here, we want to be checking that we got a valid guess. All sorts of stuff. We can't even really summarize the game until we've got the game working. So a lot of what we need to do right now, a lot of our to-dos, a lot of what's wrong with the game if we play it, is based on the fact that if we say put 3 letters in, oh my God, the whole thing falls over. So we need to start checking our input. And once we start checking our input, we need a good way of getting back from that check some information about the check. So here we've got a method called check guess validity. And at the moment it says bool, which presumably means if we return true, then it's valid, and if we return false, it's not, and we don't know why it's not valid, and it's just trying to wrap up too much information into a single bool, yes or no. It's making people presume that false means it's not valid, yada yada, and also gives them no information about what was wrong. So we are going to make a more rich return value. I'm going to delete the to-do boldly. And in order to do that, I'm going to introduce you to this enum thing. So we're going to define that somewhere at the top of our header file because we want it to be available not in the main. Well, it will be available in the main by the fact that we have hash included our bull cow game class, but we want it to be available in the class mainly. This is a feature of the class. It belongs with the class. You'll see that why in a second. Let's just define it. So we write something called enum. Now I'm going to just enum for the moment, not enum class. And we're going to call it E because Unreal's coding standards suggest that you should start enums with E. And then we're going to call it word status, for example. Okay, so we're defining an enum called word status. Now let's give ourselves some squigglies. And I'm going to bring them down a bit, just spread it out. Great. So what's a status that can come back from checking the guess? Well, OK is a meaningful status that could come back. Here's another one, not underscore isogram. That would tell us that the reason this is not good is because it's not an isogram. Now, I'm going to let you finish this list in a moment, but for now I want to talk to you about the difference between an enum and a class enum. But before we do that, let's just go and access this enum so we can see it in context. So I've created this thing. What on earth is it? It's just a value list. It's a way of preventing me from saying OK equals 1 and not isogram equals 2 and making some horrible coded thing there where we've got to go and look up a table. No, don't do that. Just use the words. And an enum allows you to use and access the words. So let's see how it allows us to access the words. Over in our implementation of check guess validity, instead of returning a bool now, we're going to be returning an E. We're going to remember that it was an enum. And then it was going to be, was it word status? I think we called it. Yeah, E word status. So we'll be returning an enum called word status. Now, it's not going to like that if we just do it in the CPP file without also updating the header to say that that's what we're doing. So here, check guess validity returns an E word status. Now, there is a way to change the two of these at the same time, but we'll use those tools later. Great. So now, of course, we can't return false, right? Because it's going to complain that it's not. The return type does not match the value to the function type. Well, that's good. It's saying we want a status back out of this. We're trying to return false. So how do we get to that status? Well, you start with the word of the enum. E makes you remember, oh, it's an enum, so I'm going to start with E. E word status. There it is. And there's a little symbol that explains that it's an enum. E word status. Now, once you've done E word status, we need to access its members. And the general way of accessing members is like this. The full bull cow games class, if we want to access the definition for check guess validity, we use : : we do the same with the enum, : : and look, it gives us a list. We're not going 1, 2, 3, some random coding looking at it. It's right here. Let's just assume it's okay. So later, to do, make, actual, error. Okay, so that's how you access it. E word status, okay. Now, before I put you in the challenge, let me just give you a word of warning about these enums. Their scope, i.e., where they are visible to. We have a bit of a problem just doing it like this this is older C++ syntax, because look what happens. If I come along at some other point and decide that I want another enum, in fact, we do have an instance where we're going to want another enum. That's going to be here when we reset, all right? So let's call it, imagine now, reset status, all right? And I'm actually going to remove this code and put it back in later, but I just want to show you something. If I later come and try and define reset status, and we could say, no hidden word of that length or something. That could be an error. But we may then come along and say we want OK. Perfectly valid to say I want an OK. But look, we're going to get a compiler problem here. It's going to say, when we try and compile, OK redefinition. What do you mean I'm redefining it? Here I'm calling an enum called word status. This is for getting values back from checking my word. And this one I want to get values back from my reset method. And I can't use OK. So OK is kind of what we call global scope at this point. It is available to both of these enums, and it won't let us even compile. That's horrible. I want to be able to use OK. I don't want to have to prefix these things. Now, let me just explain that. I don't want to have to prefix it with like some other thing in front of here. I don't care what it is. Reset OK. It's nasty. It's OK is simple. So what Unreal suggest in their coding standards, let me bring up their coding standards. Unreal coding standards. And if we go down to enumerations, they are suggesting we do, where is it? You're seeing it before me. I'm going to search for it, enum. There you go, strongly typed enums. And they're going to say, well, to do, because of this problem, we're going to put enums in their own namespace. Well, that's a bit beyond the scope of what we're doing right now. And we also don't need to put them in their own namespace. With C++11 to the rescue, we can do something called an enum class. Watch what happens when I do that. This is now what we call a strongly typed enum. Okay, forget the error, the previous version. It may moan at you that you've just changed the definition. But look, if I just put enum class and recompile anyway, obstinately, it's going to compile, and it doesn't mind, because this guy now, this enum, has scope, basically, and it's saying, well, these values only mean anything inside this enum. So if I was over here in my code, and I was trying to access something else here, like reset status, I can still have OK and no hidden word. I can repeat myself, and we have no conflict. Okay, so they're better because they're a smaller scope, and we don't create these global scope issues. Great. So what I want you to do now is I'm going to delete this reset status because I just was using it for an example. I just want you to fill in a couple more error values down here. I want you to think about what other things could go wrong when you run the game, or actually run the game and try some strange things, like think about what may happen with uppercase, or think what may happen if your input's too short, or etc. And put some meaningful value labels in here. They're just labels for you to use. So here's your challenge. Finish the error value list, write at least 2 more error values, think about what could break the game, or try using weird input and see what does break the game. Go ahead, pause the video, and let's do that challenge now. Okie dokie dokie. So welcome back. Let's just think about another 2. Well, one here is wrong length, because if I put, say, 3 letters in, I get this horrible error. Now, normally I wouldn't dismiss such a serious error so quickly and out of hand. However, we know that this is being caused by the fact that we have a mismatch between our hidden word and our guess. And what we're going to be doing in the next video is creating error checking code to prevent that from ever happening. So what should we call a error that is wrong word length? How about wrong length? Why not word? Because word's already in the status. So it'll be word status : wrong length. Simple. Simples. How about it's not lowercase? What should we call that? Well, let's be cryptic, not lowercase. The whole point is to not be cryptic. This is not error code 403. This is not lowercase. All right? English. It's what we want. It's simple and clear. So that is our enum class. Really nice there. What we're going to do in the next video is start, of course, to flesh out this checkless validity method with a load of conditionals, and then that's going to check a bunch of things and return an appropriate error or OK as necessary. And that means that over in our main, we'll be able to read the error codes and then separately decide how we report those error codes. In this game, we're talking to the user in the console about the errors, but in a future version of the game, we may use color or sound or lights or something else, and we can just swap that out on the interface level, on the view level, without worrying about how the class works, because we're getting meaningful error messages back. Hope that makes sense. Pretty cool stuff, and I shall see you on the other side. The other side of what? I guess it's the other side of the gap between the videos. Anyway, see ya.